So my suggestion, just a little suggestion, is to do some pranayama. Pranayama is a really, it comes from the Indian schools of yoga, and there are all kinds of complicated forms of pranayama, but a very good thing is to learn how to breathe deeply for long periods of time. But if you develop that skill, like if you really want to develop meditation, if you don't want to just do it as a minor hobby in your life, but if you want to go deeply into meditation, a very good thing to work on is to sit down, meditate, and meditate for a half an hour with deep breathing. It's a long time, right? But what you do then, to do a half hour of this long breath in, long breath out, long breath in, long breath out, it seems very willful, right? But what you'll notice is to be able to sustain that for half an hour is hard, because your mind will go off into thought states, won't it? You notice that here. As soon as your dreamy mind comes up, your breath gets shallow. So you train in body awareness by taking something quite deliberate, and you can't do that all the time. You wouldn't want to do that all the time. But you take something quite deliberate in the body, and you learn how to do this very deep breathing. And that does many things. But one of the things it does, it makes you more aware of the body. And because you're deliberately doing something with the breath, you're more aware of the body. And because you're more aware of the body, what happens is when your mind starts to maybe worry about something at work next week, you notice the worry more. So body awareness helps with the mood of the mind, and then you can choose that mood of the mind is negative. You can choose, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go back to the body. But that takes training. You have to do that. It doesn't come for free. And the result you'll find, if you do that kind of training with breath, is that your body you'll begin to breathe differently. Your capacity to remember the body will become stronger all the time. If I spend a half an hour doing something negative, let's say if I spend a half an hour worrying, then I'll tend to worry more, won't I? Worry begets worry. If I spend a half an hour being really conscious of the body, I'll be more aware of the body when I'm in the market, when I'm driving the car. So it's very, very helpful. Very, very helpful. Now, in the way meditation is taught, quite often the way we teach is just leave the breath alone. Leave the breath alone and just let the body breathe. Yes and no. Let the body breathe, but if you're falling asleep, you have to put more attention into it. So Satipatthana kind of has this sense of going deeply into consciousness. So what's one of the things I always recommend on retreat is to take a period of time and really get into your body. Really learn about your body. Then what happens? Let's say you're at a committee meeting and something is happening which you don't like. Someone's talking too much. That's usually something you don't like. Someone is becoming maybe argumentative, or something nasty is going on. What'll happen is your mind will be affected. You get irritated, or you say, "Why doesn't he shut up?" or whatever. But also your body will be affected. Your breathing will be affected. Now you have to work with both, don't you? If your mind is starting to get annoyed and irritated, you have to be careful, because that will spoil the meeting and it'll spoil your dinner afterwards. But also you can negotiate or deal with the mental states by going back to your breath. Now, if I've done some deep breathing in meditation consistently, not just as a once a year kind of thing, but I've done it consistently, then there will be a natural tendency for me to notice my breathing in the committee meeting, because I've done it before, right? So then in the committee meeting, someone is maybe being very egotistical, right? Yet again, it's always the same person or something, and I'm starting to get uptight. What I can do, I can practice Satipatthana. I can practice the first foundation of mindfulness by feeling my breath. What's my breath doing? Oh, it's getting really shallow. So even though I'm participating in the meeting, I don't have to close my eyes now and meditate, I can participate in the meeting, but I can also participate in the life of my body. Right? And so as I'm getting uptight about this, I'm going, wait a minute, this is attachment, this is kilesa. Let's work with the breath and the committee meeting. So I go back to something I've learned before, deep breathing. Long breath in, long breath out, long breath in. And I find I calm, then I can respond to the argument going on or whatever from a calm mind. And actually I'm much more effective in the committee meeting. Because I'm more rational, my decision making is better. Because I've let go of the kilesa, I've let go of the attachment. So satipatthana is not just something you do like in a monastery, or you don't turn it on and off like a tap. It's something you're doing all the time. If you think about, like on a retreat, say, if we do retreats, we do walking meditation and sitting meditation quite often. Sometimes we do walking very slowly, but what we're asked to do is, can you just walk 20 paces, 10 paces back and forth for half an hour? And that requires you to be in your feet. And if you're in your head, you trip, or you lose it. So the teaching asks, be in your feet. Be in your feet for a while. So you do that for a retreat. Then you'll find what happens. If you've done that consistently for a retreat, then you'll find when you're going to Loblaws, you'll be in your feet. You actually be in your body, you'll be aware. And then as your mind starts to worry, starts to fantasize, starts to complain, starts to get afraid, you'll come back to your body. So the body is such a good place. Now it has many benefits, like body awareness relaxes the body, helps with disease. We all know that bodily tension creates disease. Right? A bodily relaxation also is a sense of because your body relaxes, then you have less craving for distractions. As you have less craving, your mind has more mindfulness, and that's a foundation for liberation. You want less. Now in our culture, we don't, quite often people don't pay attention to the body because they pay a lot of attention to the intellect. So body awareness is very important in any Buddhist practice. Now, your body also registers your mind in the emotional way, doesn't it? So the third foundation of mindfulness, citta, is the mood of the mind, say. Now, let's say a lot of people who are not aware of the moods of their mind might wake up in the morning feeling a sense of worry, say. They'll wake up, and even in their dreams, they'll have a worry dream. What's going to happen? I'm going to miss the train, I'll miss the boat. Even in the dreams they're worrying. Then they wake up, and their mind is thinking, oh, what if this happens? Oh, I don't know, maybe I should, maybe they don't like me. And the mind is doing, but they're not aware. Because they're not aware of the mood of the mind. They're still living, they still drive the car, go to the grocery store, and still they're still functional. They don't drop the plate on the floor, they still function, they still do their work. But underneath it, maybe if they're not aware, their mind is just worrying all the time. And that's because they don't have the third foundation of mindfulness. They're not aware of the mood of the mind. You have a mood, don't you? There's a difference between gratitude and ingratitude. There's a difference between generosity and stinginess. There's a difference between hope and despair. They're all different. And those moods of the mind, if you're not aware of them, they create a sense of self. If you're not aware. If you're aware, it's just a mood. So let's say I wake up in the morning from my dream state, and because life is very complicated, my mind is just worrying. I'm thinking all the time. I think, what's going to happen? Maybe this and maybe that. Now that sense of self, that sense of delusion, means that first of all, I'm unhappy. And also it means that I have no space for any deeper insight into life. So there's no chance for a deep insight. Right? But if I can just wake up and say, what's the mood of the mind now? So that's one thing I suggest to people. When you wake up in the morning, what's the mood of the mind? Don't judge it. You don't have to do anything special. You have to meditate. But what's the mood of the mind? What is your mind thinking? And what's the underlying tone of that? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it pessimistic? Is it optimistic? What is it? Now that's like the doctor taking that MRI scan or whatever it is, right? And seeing more deeply. And that's what you're doing when you awaken. When you practice mindfulness, you see more deeply. So you wake up in the morning, but you really wake up. You don't just brush your teeth and worry, right? Because you can brush your teeth, and you can make your toast, and you can drink your coffee, and not be really awake. You go through the motions, but your mind is going blah, 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 blah. But to really awaken, if we use Satipatthana, third foundation of mindfulness, you awaken. What's the mood of the mind? And this is something Ajahn Chah was always emphasizing. He'd say, in Thai, they self aroma, which means check out the mood. What's the mood? What's the tone? What's the color? My mind has a kind of color, let's say, that way. Now if you know that, and you say, oh yeah, there's that one again. There's the worry. Or there's the resentment. Or there's the whatever it is, there's that one. You're looking more deeply. If you're just on the surface and you're just thinking all the time, then you're just caught up in what we call the storyline. So this morning I worry about the taxes. And then next morning I worry about my kids. And next morning I worry about Sri Lankan politics. And next morning I worry about my ingrown toenail. And so there's always something you can worry about, right? So the mood of the mind projects onto life and creates a reality. In this case, if it's worry, it's a very negative reality. But to go more deeply, no matter what you are worried about, this is worry. No matter what you are angry about, this is anger. No matter what I am excited about, this is excitement. Okay? So you're more deeply into, like the X-ray sees the bones, right? And the scan and you get the dye through. What do they call those heart things? What's the graphs?
Angiogram.
Angiogram. Okay. Angiogram sees the vein. So that's what you're doing with awareness. You want to see more deeply. Now, if you see the mood of the mind, right? You've got a choice. You've got a choice. You can choose to say, I wonder what worry feels like in my body. Now that takes a lot of mindfulness. That's a good doctor. The doctor says, well, all right, I wonder what it looks like there. So if you practice body awareness, right? And now if you are aware of the mood of the mind, you start to combine them. You say, well, I wonder what this mood is like. How does it reflect it in the breath? Yeah, and now you've got a lot of awareness. You're no longer the victim of worry. You're driving the car a bit now. You're not driven by your moods. Now if you don't have awareness, you're driven by your moods. So if everything's going well, it's a lovely day. And if it's not going well, I hate life. But then you're just a victim. You're not free. You're just a victim to the moods of the mind. You think it's external. It's because that person, but no, it's internal. Sure, the external affects you, but you have a choice in the internal. So let's say if we take that example, I wake up in the morning and my mind is caught up in the mood of worry. I say, okay, I have to deal with that, sure. That is a problem, I need to rationally deal with that, sure, okay, and I'll deal with that, that's the rational mind. But then this mood of worry, I wonder if I go to the breath, I wonder what worry is like at the end of the out-breath. And I begin to play around, and I begin to meditate in the morning. That's a good idea. And then I notice that when I'm worried, my out-breath is very shallow. I don't have much of an out-breath. And I begin to breathe more deeply, and I notice that my worry starts to abate. I'm aware of the mood, I don't indulge in the mood, I use my body, I use the breath, and that mood begins to have less power on consciousness. And as it has less power on consciousness, my capacity to function in the world is much better. Because I'm more at ease, I'm more happy. And also because my mind is not preoccupied with a negative mood, my mind has more space. And when my mind has more space, it can have insight. If my mind is preoccupied with negative things, there can be no insight, nothing new, nothing fresh. Now that kind of doing isn't just on a meditation cushion. It's something obviously you have to do all the time. And it's interesting. Now, if you, like last week I was talking about the tendency, I was talking about grasping. And what I was saying last week was that grasping is the problem. Like, if worry comes up in consciousness, and I grasp it, what happens? I think worrying thoughts. I worry. I become the worried being. It's attachment, upadana, yeah? So that's grasping. Non-grasping is knowing, this is worry. It will change, be patient. To know it as anicca dukkha anatta, to know it as a changing thing, right? So there's knowing of anicca dukkha anatta, and there's attachment, grasping, as sense of self. So the practice of non-grasping is the practice of knowing change, and training the mind, making choices, training the mind to relax. Well, that's difficult, but it is interesting, because that's where you live. You may, we're all here in Tisarana, but where we were living the last 2 hours was in our own consciousness, in our own bodies, in our own moods and emotions and so on. So what could be more interesting? What could be more important, really? Now this is quite lovely, because this attitude of awareness and training is not harsh. The attitude of awareness and training that we are encouraged in is compassionate, because what could be more compassionate for you than to be free from suffering? But if you're very harsh with yourself, you think, I shouldn't be angry, I shouldn't have lust, I should always be nice and enjoy this, which is stupid, because life isn't that way. Because sometimes you are angry, sometimes you do hate life. So the reality is this way, and then what's the mood, what's the body doing, and where's the attachment? Where's the attachment? How does attachment work? And then the relaxing of the mind, the constant relaxing of the mind. So this is work that takes at least one lifetime, right? It's something, Buddhism, we do it for a long, long time. So I just got an email from a friend who suffered. He's about my age now. He's about 60 years old. Suffered a lot from fear. I mean, really kind of awful panic attacks. Really, really deep fear. And I said to him 10 years ago, I said, give it 10 years. Okay, you know how to do it. You get a lot of fear, okay, but it's something quite strong in you, but just give it 10 years. And he said, oh no, 10 years. 10 years is a long time. It's 10 years now, and he just thanked me. Because it was so powerful in him. And it was such a powerful energy. He just kept relaxing with it. And but because he was quite diligent and honest, and he meditates twice a day. He's a really good meditator, 2 hours a day, really good. And he's just kept at it. He feels a lot of confidence now. Still the fear comes, but he's no longer the victim of the fear. The fear is simply part of a program that he has to experience this lifetime. But it took a lot of dedication, a lot of time just to be with something. Now if someone would have said to him, oh, just let go of your fear, don't attach, he would have felt guilty. Yeah, don't attach. But sometimes non-attachment does not mean non-experience. Non-attachment does not mean that the vipaka kamma of these things doesn't come through your mind. Sometimes it does. And you don't want it, but so what? You can wake up in the morning saying, I'll have no fear and anger this morning, thank you. Well, that's if you live on Mars, maybe. But the reality is, even though you might not want fear and anger, it will be stimulated by conditions. That's vipaka kamma. So that's okay. But it's the attachment when it arises. That's the problem. That's where you can work. So whether it's a few seconds of nervousness, or whether it's 10 years of fear, we don't know. We don't know how long it's going to last. But in the moment, you can be aware of it as a khandha, as just as an emotion. It arises and ceases, and that way of practice brings you back to awareness, and awareness is the gateway to the deathless. So even though I experience a negative mood, if I can sustain awareness of that negative mood, then that's on the side of nibbana. Right? That's on the side of the deathless. Even though it doesn't matter, the quality of the mood doesn't matter. It really doesn't. our mind which likes pleasure, and that's where Vedana comes in. The Vedana mind likes pleasure, doesn't like pain. Right? So that's the second foundation of mindfulness. Vedana, pleasure and pain. So we like pleasure, we don't like pain. That's obvious. Your knees start to get sore and you move your legs and so on. So fear is unpleasant. So fear has dukkha vedana in it, right? And who wants fear? I don't want fear, you don't want fear. So what we do is we try to get rid of it with tanha. It won't work. The only way we can let it cease is when we know it without tanha. So fear comes up, and then tanha comes up with it, and then we worry. And we worry and worry, but we don't really see the cessation of tanha or the cessation of fear. So Vedana and tanha is, of course, and upadana, that's the key. So the unpleasantness of fear is the problem. Because you don't want the unpleasant, we seek a distraction, or we seek to blame, or we seek to run away. But if we come back with awareness and see that, oh, this is unpleasant, be patient, this is unpleasant, then that energy dies, and our minds are free, are liberated from fear, are liberated from tanha. But that means you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. You have to be, I'm sure the bhikkhus who have to give, these young bhikkhus have to teach amazingly. I mean, I never had to teach that young. So I'm sure for some of them they feel a bit nervous sometimes when they have to teach. But that's okay. That's just nervousness. That's just unpleasant. Now you imagine if let's say if a bhikkhu has to, like when I started to have to teach, I was very nervous. Okay? So that nervousness is unpleasant. That's the Vedana. It's in the body, and the mind will think, oh, I don't want to talk, I don't want to give a talk, I'm too young. And that's unpleasant. Now, if I had not been aware of that unpleasantness, and I had just run away, then each time I run away from my fear, I become more fearful. And then I have 34 vasa, I don't want to give a talk, I don't want to give a talk. It would be ridiculous. Why? Because I haven't faced my fear. And what is it about facing fear? It's unpleasant, it's not nice. Right? So the teacher says, give a Dhamma talk. I don't want to. That's fine. Give a Dhamma talk. Okay. and the part of the Dhamma talk is facing the fear. So I remember my first Dhamma talk was about Ajahn Yung, and I had to give a talk in Thai, and I didn't really know Thai, in front of about 50 lay people. And we have to sit on the high seat, and I have to give a talk in Thai, and it was about mosquitoes, and the word in Thai for mosquito is yung, so it's Ajahn Yung, Ajahn mosquito. So I tried to give a talk about how mosquitoes were my teacher in this monastery because they were driving me crazy, biting me all the time. And most of the thing I remember about how afraid I was in that talk, but I gave the talk. So that's what life is, isn't it? Like the unpleasantness of the fear creates the tanha to run away. And the Buddha says, don't believe in tanha, because tanha just leads to the same problem. So face the tanha, face the fear, face the unpleasantness, be patient, it will change, it will cease. So now I'm yattering away here. Now you talk. And so the challenge of Dhamma is to face up to the unpleasantness of our life and being aware of that and not just distracting. And that's very mature. So if you're at the committee meeting, right, and there is someone who is unpleasant, just to insult them, that's not right. But that's what your mind might want to do. You know, your childish mind will say, you idiot, will you shut up? But we don't do that. Why don't we do that? Because we're watching that impulse. We're not just being slaves to that impulse. We're being mature, we're being dignified, we're practicing metta. And so this practice of knowing your heart and mind also affects the committee meeting, affects your society in a very good way, in a very, very wholesome way. So the main thing about the committee meeting, the main thing about the Dhamma talk, is your own mind. Because if you get that right, you give a good Dhamma talk, you'll have a good committee meeting, you'll have a good family. But if you get this wrong, Your Dhamma talk will be sour, your committee meeting will be egotistical, and your kids will be crazy. Or whatever, they'll be full of problems. So if you get this right, you get the heart right, you understand yourself, then your response to life is from Dhamma. It's from truth. If you don't get that right, it just gets more and more confusing. Alright? So leave that for your reflection.